Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit that subscribe button if you're new so you don't miss any of our great football content this season. Okay, so I want to talk about one college game and one player specifically. So Oregon in overtime beat Penn State 30-24. And I had said all week, I kind of liked Oregon to win, but they hadn't. Dante Moore, between UCLA and Oregon, he just hadn't played in a big stadium. John, I think this kid was so cool. I don't think they had to delay a game. I don't think they had an offensive penalty in terms of not being lined up. He goes into that environment. That is an elite defense that has eaten quarterbacks alive. 3 touchdowns, no picks, 29-39, 250 yards. And multiple times, the camera takes pictures of Dante Moore. Totally unfazed. In arguably, arguably the hardest environment in the country is
definitely in their conference.
I think Dante Moore is the best quarterback in the country. He is the best quarterback. If you're talking poise, size, arm, Oregon's always had speed, but all these top programs do. I think Ohio State's the better team. I thought that was such a defining win. I mean, they beat Ohio State last year in Autzen. So you go all the way. And James Franklin's going to get crushed, and rightly so, but he has lost to Harbaugh's Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon. He's losing to the right people, because I don't think Penn State's as good as Ohio State or Harbaugh with Michigan. I don't think it's as good a program as Oregon, because Oregon recruits California at a high level. But what was your interpretation of the game and Dante Moore? I was kind of blown away by the performance.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty simple. These teams, and you could take the other game that was going on at the same time, Georgia and Alabama.
I watched that.
They don't play in that many games where the talent's equal. So whether their quarterback's on or off, whether Aller plays good or bad against Nevada or FIU, or even the Iowas and some of these other teams they're going to play, it does not matter. They're just going to out-talent them. The other team's not going to be able to score, and they're going to win even when they play shitty 27-7. There are going to be a couple games throughout the year where they got equal talent. And we say it with Penn State now because Penn State's an elite roster. Like me, I had those 2 games on at the same time. It's like there are NFL players everywhere in these 2 games.
Oh no, those were the quarterback play, the coaching, the speed. Insane.
Yeah. So to me, both games came down to Dante Moore's a 5-star quarterback who looks like he's a star, and Ty Simpson. Everyone wrote that kid off. Whatever DeBoer and Grubb have done to him, he looks like a stud. So what happens in the NFL? Most teams are pretty equal. Like, what the hell's the difference between the Jags and the 49ers? Not much. Well, if your quarterback crumbles, you're going to have problems. And that's the NFL, right? It's quarterback play. Why do we say that? Because most teams have similar talent. There's not 3 teams. I mean, the Lions, there are a couple teams in the NFL, but over 25 teams in the NFL, man for man, are basically the same. So it's like, what's your quarterback? And that's what it becomes in college football now, especially with the NIL. Your team's not as deep.
Oh, the transfer portal has evened everything out.
And Aller last night, and I know he hit the deep bomb late, but was mainly atrocious. And he's just...
Yes.
I've always thought this with quarterback play, 2 things that we don't talk enough about are toughness and just kind of instincts. And he's tough. Like, he will lower shoulder. I
don't love his instincts either.
They just don't exist. He's just not an instinctive player. And to me, Moore, and I would say the same thing about Tice. I would say of the 4 quarterbacks last night, and I would include Gunnar Stockton, Aller was the worst. Stockton made a couple big throws. Listen, he's not the best, but this guy's, to me, Aller is, James Franklin is going to get dragged through the mud, I'm sure, this week. I think they have a bye week. They've been hyping this team, for so long about just this game and how much it meant. Because Penn State now has had like a 2 or 3 game regular season, right, for the last several years. So Ohio State, Michigan, now Oregon. And it was just, it's hard for me to put it on him because their teams felt ready. It's the quarterback. You recruit the wrong quarterback. We've seen Dabo do this. When you get Trevor Lawrence or a young Deshaun Watson, we saw it with Saban. When he had Tua and Ed Ogeron got Burrow, you look really good. When you don't, it's really hard. And they went all in on Aller. Live it in, some of my buddies back there went to Penn State. They were telling me a couple years ago, we got this guy supposed to be like Josh Allen. That was the hype on Drew Aller coming out of high school.
I didn't like him 2 years ago, but I thought he improved so much last year. At the end of the year, I was like, okay, if he does that again, he's a top 10 pick.
Because the Kansas offensive coordinator that many believes one of the best offensive coordinators in the league. So it's not their offensive coordinator who's excellent. They added the Ross kid last night that made some plays. They've added some transfers. They have great running backs, right? And it's him. I mean, obviously the throw in overtime, but the first half, he was just atrocious. The other thing is he can't just make the plays more, Cam. Even Ty Simpson, he just can't make the plays. So I was high on him just because I wanted to be. I'd heard the hype, and it just got to be out. You just got to be out.
John, when I watched that game last night with Dante Moore, and you and I use this word, but there is juice. Dante Moore, poise, juice, arm, like you can just sense it. You can tell that Oregon totally believes in him, and Lanning totally believes in him. And when you put guys on the same field together, it's like when you put Mahomes and Lamar on the same field together, there looks like there's a significant gap. There doesn't when it's Josh Allen and Mahomes. They're both great. Lamar and Mahomes, there's a gap. And when I watched that last night, that game did Drew Aller no draft favors. He didn't look like he was even on the same planet. Okay.
Is Oregon the only school, I get, like you said, they're newer to this, right, of the last 3 decades, 25 years, but they don't have they ever won a national championship in football? I mean, definitely not in the modern era. So it's like
played for it.
It does feel like this team and Dan Lanning with the NIL, they are going to be right there. College football is a little more random now with some of these games, injuries and stuff. You got to win multiple games, but that tight end they got, holy moly. I mean, number 18 is just a monster. Their defense, and this goes back to Mario. They have recruited, and Chip did, with DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead and some of the guys they used to have. They have a very physical team because Penn State, that's the one thing they hang their hat on. We're one of the fastest, most physical. We're an SEC defense. And Oregon's like, okay, so are we. So it's like, well, if you're going to get that quarterback play, because, listen, Dylan Gabriel, good player. I know, obviously, Stefanski.
He's not close to that.
No.
The other thing I'll bring up before we get to the Ryder Cup is that I was at the USC game. And, they
How
were
far is
missing
that away from your house? Champaign.
2.5 hour train ride, 2.5 hour drive. Bad. It was warm, and it was still, there was no, it's farm country. So it was warm and not covered. So, the players, it was hot. But when D'Anton Lynn came to USC, the UCLA defensive coordinator, they went and bought him, and they brought him over. And immediately the defense was better. And everybody was criticizing Lincoln Riley because Jaden Malavai throws to Lemon for the go-ahead touchdown with like 1:55 left. And J-Mac goes, oh, they won. And I text J-Mac. I said, Illinois has a great kicker. USC secondary is awful. Can't tackle. They're missing their best safety. I said, J-Mac, Illinois is going to drive down the field and hit the game-winning field goal. Ended up being closer than I thought it would. I said, but if you were, I was at the game. Illinois was the much better team. Illinois moved the ball up and down the field. USC got no pass rush. And it was, I was swimming around on the internet, last night, looking at stuff, and somebody brought up the point. I didn't write it down, but somebody brought up the point. They said, the defense has gotten softer. They're bigger. There's no question. They paid for size in the NIL portal. They went and paid for size, and they've got it, and they recruited a couple big-time freshmen, one from Canada, one from Florida.
Who's number Stewart. 4, that 18-year-old pass rusher? He's a monster.
Yeah, Akeem Stewart's going to be really good next year. If they can keep their guys, they're going to have a good D-line. No pressure. Illinois got eaten alive up front by Indiana. USC got no pressure. And somebody pointed out, they said, the longer Lynn is with Lincoln Riley, the softer the defense gets. And we can keep blaming Alex Grinch. When you go to Oklahoma, one of the knocks was defensively, they weren't Stoops' defense. They weren't as physical. They couldn't make big stops. And somebody pointed out, is it practice? Nobody questions the offense. I mean, they were missing offensive linemen. They had a guard playing right tackle, right left tackle. I mean, they were all over, and that's tough on the road. They're college kids, and they scored plenty of points. But they couldn't stop the Fighting Illini and sort of an average college quarterback. They don't have big dime receivers. Offensive line got eaten alive by Indiana. And I sat there and I'm like, is it Lincoln? Is it practice? It's just once again, an incredibly soft defense. You can talk about injuries. Yes, they were missing Kamari Ramsey, the safety, but Illinois was more physical for 3.5 hours.
I kind of checked out, and then when the game, did they have multiple fumbles to even get back into the game? Like Illinois gave them the ball back, right? It should not even have been. They were getting their ass kicked.
Yeah, they got, and I don't want to say breaks because they created the fumbles. Eric Gentry's their best defensive player, the linebacker, punched the ball out. So again, they were very opportunistic defensively in 2 occasions, but Illinois was clearly the better team and did whatever they wanted offensively.
I watched the first half. I was flying back from New York on the plane, and they just lost 63-10, and Bielema is a tough guy, and they won 9 games last year. So you knew, especially big noon kickoffs there, that you were going to get a team ready to play. So if you're Lincoln all week long, you guys, listen, that 63-10 means nothing. This team is going to come out swinging. And then that game opened up, and it looked like a Bielema team from Wisconsin. They hit him right in the mouth. And then they ran like the Philly special. I just went there just getting out coaching, and that worked. Now, I will defend West Coast teams in general traveling and the big. It's weird on your, but they just showed up pretty flat and they were getting worked. And clearly Illinois is not as bad as what we witnessed, but you're getting a really good coach. Like Bielema is a tough guy. I say this all the time. You don't fake being tough. You either the Harbaugh, Dan Campbell, they just are tough guys, right? And some of the offensive guys that aren't, a McVay, a LaFleur, a Kyle, they have to make sure to emphasize that on personnel. Right? So you just got to the Leach guys. Now, you could say Lincoln's offense, and I bet he would say is a lot different than what I was taught in 15, 20 years ago for Mike. But clearly they didn't recruit Alabama, Ohio State defensive players, but they were never good on defense because how do you get good practicing against that offense? So to me, there's a direct correlation in the way you practice. Why have Andy Reid's teams, he's an offensive guy for 25 years. Ask any player that's ever played for him. Practice hard. And
yes, hardest practice in the league.
Our chin straps are buckled up. We're not doing walkthroughs. You say the Eagles are a good example. They don't necessarily practice as hard. Fangio will say that. They get elite players, right? So you got to do one of the two. And his practices are never going to be Nick Saban's or Kirby Smart's. They're just not. Look at DeBoer. DeBoer, former offensive lineman, he's kind of a tough guy. His teams are pretty tough, though he likes to throw the ball. I think they practice pretty hard. It's pretty serious. I'm not saying Lincoln doesn't practice hard, but his offense clearly doesn't create physicality in practice. And if you're not getting Pete Carroll's recruiting classes, and they've done better, right, the last 12 months and look better moving forward. But right now, wasn't there safety down? He got sick or something the night before, so he didn't play.
Yeah, Kamari Ramsey threw up. That hurt because they're not good in the secondary to start. So, he's their best player.
But they showed up flat, and Bielema's team showed up to win that game immediately. And it was damn, USC was going to be in for a fight early on. And let's face it, they're just what I think people's expectations for this program, it just hasn't quite been the same. Where on the flip side, wouldn't you say, and listen, we were after that DeBoer Florida State game, we're this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And how about that comeback over the last month? I mean, you know what that guy is? He's beaten Sark, he's beaten Lanning, he's beaten Whittingham, he's now beaten Kirby twice. Listen, they had an awful day, but I'm watching them last night. It's not easy to match.
They could play for the national championship. Oh. Easy.
He gets Grubb, weird fit in the NFL with McDonald and Schneider. It didn't work. He does work with DeBoer, being his right-hand guy, and he had Ty Simpson looking like, an NFL player. So I just went, coaching still really matters, and it's harder in college because you're not, the 20 hours, even if that doesn't matter as much.
What's funny? I sent a tweet this morning. I said, success is hard, and it takes a lot longer than the media and fans want to admit. But Kalen DeBoer's coaching last night was magnificent. And Greg Byrne texted me, the AD at Alabama, and we had a little chit-chat about the process of hiring him. And he just said he's just such a great, great guy. I can't go into too much of what he said. But the point is, Nick Saban lost to Louisiana.
Georgia hadn't lost in 35 games at home.
And by Georgia now, Kirby Smart's 1-7 against Bama, I think. All I know is I watched that coaching in the first half, the play calling. I watched Bama last night, and I'm like, if you told me Bama meets Ohio State in the Natty, I'd be like, yeah, that's right. That's what's going to happen. Or Bama plays Oregon. I think Oregon's win at Penn State and Bama's win are as impressive college wins, as impressive as college wins get. Kids in those environments, those teams don't lose there.